Well, hello everybody. It's around 5:10 in the morning and I woke up at about 4:30. So, today we're going to be talking about some channel updates and my election forecasts. Now, some quick notes. Is this channel going to become an election channel? I mean, after all, I got a combined almost 800 views on my two election videos. So, is it going to become an election forecast video? Absolutely 100% not. It might be what's best for my channel growth since I found some success with it, but it is absolutely, this channel's purpose is absolutely not meant. This channel is absolutely not going to be an election channel. That's not what it was built for. It's not designed to be an election forecast channel. It's designed to talk about my life. Sometimes I'll talk about external events going on in the world or even on YouTube. Like, the black pill, which I've kind of distanced myself from quite a bit, even though I believe, somewhat in it. Some politics, things like that. But this is not an election forecast channel. The purpose of this channel is to talk about my life, and I don't want it to be very big because I feel like that would shift my perspectives on this channel from a qualitative to a quantitative standpoint. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is that if I received a lot of views and comments, I would care more about the quantity of them than the actual quality, which is appreciating what the comments said and really reading through it. And sometimes I respond to the comments, and I really appreciate it. It's like I really appreciate the quality of that one comment, not just it's a comment like 300 others, and that's my personal best. So that's why I don't want this channel to become large. I also don't want to be. Oh, I hope I don't. Yeah, I was about to say. I don't want to be watched. Like, I don't want to be watched by hundreds or thousands of people. That's just not something that I want to do. It's not something that I've ever wanted to do. I've always wanted to remain small. I've always wanted to have an extremely small, loyal fan base. And that's kind of what I've achieved, essentially. Not all of my videos get, a lot of watch time, but it's good enough. Some people are interested in my life, and that's all that matters. Now, when it comes to the actual election, why was I right? Why was I right that Trump was going to win all 7 swing states, and um, he was going to win all 7 swing states, and things like that. Were you just to have a conservative bias? Well, let me tell you something. All right. So there's streamers like Vosh who thought that Kamala was going to win up until she literally said that she wasn't talking that night, and where Trump had. I don't know. The New York Times needle had him at a 90 or 95% chance of winning. That's how delusional he was. Vosh was extremely delusional. I mean, I hate the guy for many reasons, but Vosh was very delusional that night. And so it kind of just shows you how bias can really uh, turn your predictions sour, so to say, to where they're not realistic. Because I believe that Vosh had Iowa going blue because of Seltzer. He had Michigan and Wisconsin as lean or even likely blue. He had Nevada. I think he had North Carolina as lean blue. And that's just not something that is all too likely. Iowa going blue was not likely at all, and he wasn't taking data into consideration. Now the reason why I put all 7 swing states under Trump is for a couple reasons. So one is the early vote. Now, Democrats for some reason really didn't want to talk about the early vote. They really didn't. Yes, they said, "Oh, this college has record turnout and young voters are more likely to be Republican." But what they weren't talking about was the early vote that was coming in and how it compared to 2016 and 2020. When you really compare, or 2020 and 2024, and when you really compare voting registration in a state like Pennsylvania combined with the mail-in ballots that were currently coming in and the early vote that was coming in, you would see a clear telltale sign that across the board, Trump was doing much better than he was 4 years ago. And that's not conservative bias. That's not because, ooh, my Trump's gonna win freaking New Jersey. He actually almost did. He almost won it. It was only 5 points blue. But what you notice is that even in some of the states that they said that, he wasn't going to do well in and that were safe or even likely Democrat, he almost won them. Or he was, maybe 5 or 6 points off in a state where that's highly impressive for a Republican to do, right? And I knew that this was going to be the case with if the early voting numbers showed what they did, but Democrats seem to ignore those numbers, and they seem to forget the fact that that in person there is a much higher turnout for Republicans, and there's a much higher turnout with men who typically vote Republican. So that's now another reason why is because unlike 2016, I feel as though that this election was more countrywide. Now, what do I mean by that? So, I think the main reason why Trump won in 2016 and didn't, the main reason why Trump won in 2016, I believe, had a little bit less to do with countrywide problems. So, I think the main reason why he won the Rust Belt, for example, was because he won Arizona and Georgia because they were kind of expected to go Republican, right? They were traditionally Republican states for that time. They were not considered super swing states at the time, so we won those two. But I think the main reason why he won in 2016 was because of the trade. Well, this is what the people thought, right? If you don't think this is true, go ahead. But I think this is what the people at the time thought, which is that the trade deals that the Democrat politicians signed. I'm not actually sure who signed NAFTA. I know I'm a fucking moron. But NAFTA was seen as a Democrat flaw. I think NAFTA was seen as a Democrat flaw, and the workers in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin that had the manufacturing industry wiped out, and all the blue-collar working class against them, voted for Donald Trump, and that's why he won those states. At the time, the economy wasn't great under Obama. It took us many years to get out of recession. The 2008 recession, it wasn't terrible, in my opinion. But voters generally, I feel like in the Northern Rust Belt, had a regional reason why to vote for him. Florida and North Carolina kind of went the way they did, maybe because of other reasons, although it was Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan were supposed to be lean and even close to likely blue at the time. So they had a specific regional reason why they were voting, which was so many of their factory and manufacturing jobs were basically non-existent, and so they were pissed off. This time around, I didn't think that was the case. You had one semi-regional issue affecting the cities and Nevada and Arizona, but you also had foreign policy mistakes under the Biden administration, and you also had the economy, which saw huge inflation, and you also saw a national, and I repeat, a national consensus that the direction of the country was on the wrong track, right? And you had the fact that Kamala was never actually nominated. And this is why I had such a problem with the 13 keys, is that several of the keys that Alan Lichtman so-called highlighted as true for Kamala was actually pretty false. So, for example, the primary contest key, where there was no, I think that one is like, there's no competition. Well, yeah, there's no competition because, hold on. So Biden had to go against RFK Jr. and RFK Jr. was at the time taking a considerable amount of votes away from, and there was a good 10% that were uncommitted for Biden, 10 to 15%. So in my opinion, there's reasonable primary contest against Biden at the time. So Harris never actually got nominated either. Right? So I don't think it's fair to say, well, she won that primary contest without dispute because she was put up there. Right? That's not really a thing that I would say is a good thing. As far as the scandal key, I actually agree on that because while the Biden administration has been littered with scandals, it hasn't been so big as to be a huge national story. Right? And that's just the unfortunate part is that scandals, even though there might be many scandals of a White House, they're not often national stories to the point where, 300 million people are aware of it. It's just not happening. Right, as far as foreign policy failures, Afghanistan was absolutely the case. Afghanistan was an absolute failure by the Biden administration's part, and we've had 2 wars, one threatening NATO. So anyways, those were some keys that I wanted to highlight. But the economy, now this is another thing where I think that this would make Trump win, right? It's not what Alan Lichtman thinks, right? If Alan Lichtman thinks the economy is strong, then good for him, right? I believe that the definition is there can't be a recession and there has to be long-term growth. Now, we did see growth in the stock market, but the problem with the keys is that most of the Americans thought that we were in a recession, that we were in a terrible economy state. That was on the eyes, those were on the eyes of the voters. Um, right, and we had 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. So we did actually have a recession under the Biden administration, but they refused to call it a recession. The minimum definition of a recession was 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. And we encountered that under the Biden administration. And we've encountered other growth problems with the economy, like jobs. The jobs report, like the October jobs report, for example, had 12,000 jobs, which is very weak. So, in my opinion, there was, I mean, here's the thing. Allen's Keys doesn't rely on polls of what people are thinking, like people are thinking of the government or what people, what people think of the government, but they're exactly related to it, right? The idea is that these keys will that the incumbent holds in office will determine whether or not the American public will vote for them. So when the American public is telling you, a large majority of them are telling you that the economy is trash, that means that the economy is not doing well like you think it is. So this is the problem that I have with the keys. And another thing that I have with the problem with the keys is that they don't take into consideration severity of problems, right? So let's say, so my bad, allergies these days. So let's say, for example, that a politician goes in and commits a massacre, that just like starts massacring people, right? I don't know, American citizens. They just start massacring people all of a sudden with the military. I don't know, just some like 1984, shit, right? And let's say there's an election. I know that would likely be under a dictatorship, but let's just imagine that, or let's imagine such a severe economic recession. So let's say that two of the keys are wrong. They're good on foreign policy. There are no actual real scandals within the administration, but the economy is so poor that people are literally lining up for gasoline at $6 a gallon, and transportation is completely grounded. There's no transportation because gas is just so expensive to the point where there's no travel at all, right? Well, it doesn't take it. That's only two of the keys: short and long-term economy, right? So if there's no GDP growth and the economy is so poor to the fact where people can't travel or get around at all, those are only two of the keys. So the person is going to get elected again. That's another problem that I have with the keys, is severity of the keys. So you could have one or two really bad keys, and theoretically the person would still get elected. And that's just something I don't agree on. Now, I gotta go because this boat is gonna go after me. This boat on the right-hand side. So, when I thought that Trump was going to win all 7 swing states, it was because of the early mail-in, early vote. I keep saying mail-in. Early vote, because Harris was not actually nominated, and because she did so poorly in the past, we had kind of a divide among the leftists because of the Palestine conflict and how so many people didn't like her because of the Palestine problem, the Palestine-Israel war. We had such a terrible economy which affected the nation, the entire nation. These are all the economy, I think, is the main reason why all 7 swing states went red, because across the board it affected everyone, right? Gas prices affected everyone. The fact that people are not able to buy homes anymore affects everyone, right? It's not 2016 where the manufacturing jobs being lost are mainly in the north, which is a good reason why Nevada went blue, for example. So that's why I thought that Trump was going to win all 7 swing states. There were problems with Kamala's campaign. She didn't win really anything in 2020 as far as the primaries across the nation. So she's highly unpopular across the nation. She, she's under an administration where the economy was terrible. She said that Bidenomics were working. She flip-flopped her policies. So that's why I thought that all 7 swing states were probably going to vote together for Trump. So yeah, I guess there's my answer right there. I have high criticisms of Alan Lichtman's keys. I think that voters were going to vote if they were going to go for Trump. I feel like basically all the swing states were going to go for him. The numbers were looking good early, and voter registration, and I just feel like those were kind of missed by people like Alan Lichtman, because all he relies on is his keys. He doesn't rely on any other data. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not in favor of hard data either, because polling has been so undersampling Republicans, it seems, right? It seems like they've been so undersampling Republicans. So, I'm not too in favor of the polls either, but there is a point where you have to look back and say, look at the voter registrations and look at the early vote. This is so incredibly Republican, and we usually undersample Republicans, right? And another reason why I thought that all 7 swing states were going to go to Trump was, if you look at the polls in 2020, Biden was expected to win a much higher margin than Harris, like on a much higher level than Harris was forecasted in the polls, and yet, Harris, my bad, and yet Harris was tied with Trump, and Trump overperformed in 2016 and 2020. So it's really a pattern where we've seen that Donald Trump has overperformed twice, including in an election where he had a 9 in 10 chance of losing. That was the Biden-Trump election. Most polls were giving him a 9 in 10 chance of losing the election, and it only went down as time increased. And he lost. Sure, he lost the electoral vote college by quite a bit, but he lost by about 40,000 votes. He lost about a quarter of a point in Georgia, maybe half to 3/4 of a point in Arizona. I mean, we're talking a couple 10,000 votes each. In an election year with incredibly high Democrat turnout, and I just didn't see the enthusiasm for that this election. Anyways, that has been me explaining why I thought all 7 swing states would go for Trump, and I'm out. See ya.